How many people here tonight are of Italian heritage? My wife Joyce is mostly Italian, and she talks with her hands. Now, it may be a myth, it may be stereotyping, or maybe it's true that Italian people talk with their hands. But if you know someone of Italian heritage, it's sort of fun to poke fun at them about that. But stop and think about the value that gestures and body language bring to our verbal communication. If you're in a building and you look through a glass door and you can see some people on the other side but you can't hear them, would you be able to tell if they were mad? How about if one of them was really passionate about what they were saying? Could you tell? What if one of them was totally disinterested in what the other person had to say? Could you tell that? Probably so. How could you tell? By virtue of their body language and their gestures, right? Now, what I'm going to talk about here tonight primarily is gestures, but remember that the things we'll talk about here tonight will be just as applicable to body language in general. Now, as I said before, body language and gestures bring a tremendous amount of value to your speech. You can do this whether you're behind the lectern or whether you're out in front. But we've all seen people, inexperienced speakers in particular, who stand with their hands limp at their sides. We've seen people who sort of nervously fidget with a pen or with their clothes. We've seen speakers put their hands in their pocket. We've all seen it. We've all done it. So let's talk about what you really should do with your hands when you're giving a presentation. Now, one of the things I want to start with is I do a lot of public speaking for my business, and anytime I get an opportunity, I try to do it without a microphone. Now, I do that because I don't like to be stuck to a microphone if it's stationary, and I don't like to hold one in my hand because that sort of cramps my style for using gestures. So I get in the habit of just belting it out so everyone in the room can hear me, even in a good-sized room. But for those of you that will be giving some public presentations, there's a side benefit. And here's what it is. When you show up, there's always the chance that something unexpected will go wrong. And the most likely thing to happen is the sound system won't work. So when you get there, if you're used to doing that, to belting it out, then when they tell you, hey, Alan, the sound system doesn't work, you don't get nervous, you don't worry about it, you just step right up and off you go. Side benefit. Let's start with this tip. When you're doing a speech, try to keep your hands, for the most part, above your waist. It keeps you from putting them in your pocket, it keeps you from letting your hands hang limp at your sides. And from this starting point, now you can begin to develop your own personal style. Now, by the way, I don't like to use notes, but tonight, if you notice, I have some notes written on my hands. And I did that for a reason, because if you've been listening to the news, Sarah Palin got caught with some notes on her hands. So I stand in solidarity with Sarah. I figured if it's good enough for the next president, it's good enough for me. So, here's another tip for you. Vary your gestures, because if you use the same gesture over and over again, what's going to happen is pretty soon people will begin to focus on that and it will become a distraction and they won't pay attention to your presentation. How about this? Adopt your own personal style of gesturing that matches you and your personality. Some people are kind of outgoing and flamboyant. They'll probably use dramatic gestures. Other people, like me, a little more laid back, a little more subdued. So maybe you have a little more of a subdued gesturing style. Perfectly okay. Neither one's right or wrong. But if you try to be something you're not, it's probably going to show, and it will make you look awkward and stiff. So adopt a style that works for you. How about this? Do things with your gesturing that match the situation. For instance, maybe you're giving a speech with some drama, with some action. So maybe you want to even sort of act out what's going on. And your body language, your gestures can help you do that. Here's an example. Let's say I'm at home, and there's a knock on the door. And I go to the door, and it's the tax assessor, the real estate tax assessor. And he says, Mr. Collier, even though your property has gone down in value in the recession, just like everyone else's, your property taxes are going up 25% next year. Well, when this happened, what happened was, I did what any other person would do. I grabbed the guy by his collar, I drug him in the house, I knocked him around a bit, and I chained him to a water pipe in my basement. So you can see how you can act out this sort of thing. And by the way, as Joe said, he had to leave early because he has a problem in his basement. I too have now a problem. How about adopting gestures to go with specific words in your speech? For instance, if you say stop, you can put your hand up. If you want to describe a distance, you can use your hands to describe short distance or a long distance. If you're talking about yourself, you can put your hand on your chest to bring attention to yourself. There are all kinds of opportunities to do this sort of thing when you're speaking, but just when you do it, make sure that you're doing it in a fluid, natural way so you don't appear stiff or unnatural. How, oh how, do you gain these skills? Well, you heard it from Carl, and you heard it from Tom. Practice, practice, practice. I'm going to give you 3 ways to practice. Number 1, as Carl said, practice in front of a mirror and watch yourself. Number 2, practice in front of a live audience. Now, if you go somewhere else to speak and you want feedback, you'll have to ask for it. Here at Toastmasters, we get it automatically. I will get mine from Kathy when she gives me an evaluation. Third way, practice in front of a video camera, as we have the opportunity to do here at Toastmasters every week. So in summary, your speech is much more than the words that you speak. Your body language, your gestures, can bring effective and valuable assistance to the message that you're trying to portray. So if you will prepare just as hard, just as thoroughly for the visual part of your presentation as you do for the verbal, your audience will remember your message long after you're done, even if you're not Italian.